Now it's time to preview an upcoming game with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at another Kickstarter preview. This time we're going to take a look at Epic Death by Waits in Graves. Now this is a game for 2 to 5 players in which each player has their own adventuring party that they're taking out to complete quests, be it fighting a group of bats or getting into a bar fight, whatever the case may be, in order to earn loot, and that loot will provide them with epic points. Whereas if they fail in completing their quest, they will gain fail points. Fail being bad, and of course epic being good. As the game progresses, you're going to switch, and you're going to be trying to get more epic points by dying to the biggest, baddest monster that you can. But succeeding will also have some benefits in terms of getting more loot. And at the end of the game, your final score will be the epic of all of the characters that you've managed to get killed off, minus the fail of all the characters you managed to get kicked off or killed. So real quick, we're going to take a look at what you get inside of this box, and a reminder that these are prototype components. After that, we'll come back and I'll sum the whole thing up for you. So here you can see the prototype components for Epic Death. Now this is a card game in which players are going to represent a group of 5 heroes. You see I have 5 heroes laid out here. They're all the same for purposes of the effects through the game. They're basically just placeholders for holding items, but you'll get 5 of them. They have different names and different flavor text, so it's interesting to see what's drawn on them, the art and so forth, and the flavor. And there are more of these. There are a whole bunch of them, so you'll get 5 of these random heroes at the start of the game. In addition, you'll see a pool of dice. These are the dice you're going to be rolling in order to try and defeat quests. Now, quests are located in this deck here. You'll see that there's a green deck, and then on top of that, there's a red deck. The green deck are the easier quests. In the beginning of the game, there'll be 5 of these quests out. Each of these quests is going to have several things written on it. So why don't we examine one of these? Let's take a look at this one here. We have a bar brawl. And you can see on this card we have some text at the top, and then we have several other things. The first thing to look at is that it says here we need 3 trivial victories. Trivial victories are also represented by this green down here. And that means that you can win if you roll a 4, 5, or 6, and you need 3 4, 5s, and 6s on all of the dice that you roll, which you start with 10 dice. So that's not too hard. And if you succeed at this, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get 1 loot and 1 fate. Well, what do those mean? We'll get to that shortly. At the bottom right-hand corner here, you can see a number, and this is called fail. If you fail to get your 3, 4, 5s, and 6s on your rolled dice, you're going to take this card, you're going to put it underneath one of your heroes, and this will be their fail score, which are negative points throughout the game. Points that you don't necessarily want. So that's how that's going to work. Later in the game, you're going to come across epic quests. Epic quests are laid out the same way, except for you'll see they don't have a fail value, and they're typically a little bit harder. At the top here, you can see that there's a red number, and this number is going to be what's called the epic value. This one in this case is 100. If you beat these quests, you actually don't get the epic value. You're going to succeed, and you're going to get the loot and the fate cards that are talked about on the bottom. But if you lose to these quests, these epic quests, you're going to have a death. You will die to the quest, and you're trying to die to the most epic things you can. So insofar as doing that, you'll get the points at the top of the card. You'll put this underneath one of your heroes, who will then die, and they will score these points at the end of the game, but only score points for dead heroes. So if your heroes are surviving at the end of the game and they have points under them, they're not going to score anything. The other 2 decks are the fate and loot decks. Inside of the loot deck, you'll see that we have different types of loot. There are going to be weapons, there will be armors, and there will be helmets. So each character can wear one of each type of loot. And on these cards, you'll see they also have epic values. So if you get these from fighting different monsters, you can place them underneath your heroes, 1 type of item per hero, and they will add their epic value as long as that hero is dead at the end of the game. In addition, there are different sets of these. Each weapon, helmet, and armor is going to have a name on it. So for example, this one here is the Predator weapon. And if you manage to get all 3 types of the same onto one of your heroes, you'll get double the epic for them as long as they're dead at the end of the game. The last deck is this purple deck, which are called fate cards, and these are going to be the cards you use to manipulate the dice pool, be it your dice pool or your opponent's dice pool. And inside of this deck, there are various different types of cards. Now, there are 2 that I'll talk about later, but we have some that are right here in my hand. And these cards, as I said, are going to be played on your turn or on your opponent's turns to manipulate how many dice they get to roll. So on a player's turn, the first thing they're going to do is choose one of the available quests in order to fight. And as I said, some of them are easier than others. So you'll see the green skulls mean you need 4, 5s, or 6s. The yellow skulls mean you need 5s or 6s. And the red skulls are going to need 6s for victory. So this one here says 4 mighty victories would be 4, 5s, or 6s. Not a 4, 5, or 6, but 4 total 5s or 6s. This one here would be 4 6s in order to beat that card. So the harder card you choose, the more the reward is going to be in terms of loot, the more the reward is going to be in terms of more cards that you can draw into your hand to affect dice, but the harder it's going to be to beat, of course. So you choose one of these quests, and after this, you're going to be able to play 2 different types of cards. Your opponents will be able to play these 2 different cards on you, or you can play them on yourself. And they are Resurrection, or bringing back to life characters, and marking characters for death. Now what this means is one of your opponents could choose to mark one of your characters for death. You can only do this on a character that has a score, be it positive or negative. So if you have a fail score on one of your guys, you will put, of course, that mark for death on him, and you want him to be dead. You want your opponent to have guys with fail scores dead because they're going to subtract from their scores at the end of the game. If you have a guy who is already dead that has a fail score, you may want to bring him back to life. And you'll put this card on here, and based on the success or failure of the quest you're on, you may be able to bring him back to life. If you succeed in your quest, he will become back to life, or, if marked for death, if you fail in your quest, the character will die. So this is a way to move characters around and score points or remove points from being scored by marking them for death or bringing them back to life. So that's how those 2 cards work, and you can only play them on cards that have a score, be it positive or negative, in the form of epic or fail. The other cards that are in the deck are basically going to modify the dice pool. So let's say I chose this quest here, the Mysterious Stranger, and I decide to fight him. I need 4 Mighty Victories in order to do so. And what I would do is I would have this 10 dice pool, but before those get rolled, anybody can play these cards on my dice pool. And you'll see here they have different effects. So for example, somebody could play a plus or minus 2 dice, and they would choose to either add or subtract 2 dice to my dice pool. So maybe they subtract 2. And then I could maybe play plus a d6 of dice. So I would roll a die and see how many dice I get back. I get 2 back, so I'm right back to where I started. And people could keep playing cards in this manner until they decided nobody else wanted to play any cards. At this point, I would take my remaining dice pool. Let's say I have all 10 because of what just happened. I lost 2 and then I got 2 back, and I would roll them. And we'd check and see if I succeeded. So I need 4 victories, 4 mighty victories, which are 5s or 6s. And I look at my dice pool, and I see I have 5, 5, 6. I don't have enough, and I would fail this quest. Now, for the normal quest, I do not die to the quest. What happens instead is that I take this card, and I'm going to have to place it underneath one of the people in my party. So let's say, for example, Brahm here takes this, and he now has 300 fail points. This is points that I don't want to score at the end of the game because they're negative. So, if he stays alive, I won't have to score them, but if he dies, I'll have 300 negative points. If I had instead succeeded, I would have gone ahead and I would have gotten 2 loot cards and 2 fate cards. So let's say instead that I rolled this 6 and I got my 4 victories. I would then take my 2 loot cards and see if I wanted to place them on any of my people. So I got an octopus helmet or a squid helmet, and I got a weapon here. So maybe I decide to put the weapon on my rogue, which is going to be worth 100 points, and I put the squid helmet on this character here, which is worth 400 epic points if that character is dead at the end of the game. The quest, of course, would be removed instead of being placed under me, and would be out of the game. And the next player would move on to their turn, and they would have the choice of choosing one of the remaining quests to fight. So you'll see that the quest lot is going to dwindle as the game goes on. Now, as I said, you're going to keep on in this manner, either succeeding at the quest, and, of course, getting the loot and the fate cards, which I would draw 2 and add to my hand at this point, or you're going to fail to the quest, and you're going to earn the fail points by putting it underneath one of your characters. Eventually, you're going to get down to the epic quests, and these are going to start coming out, and you'll see that they are a lot harder. So that one requires 5 victories of 5s or 6s. Another one, this one requires 3 6s, and they're just generally harder. But here, the goal of the game shifts. You're no longer trying to win in order to get more cards. You're more likely trying to lose to these guys in order to score their epic values and place them underneath you and kill off one of your characters. So, eventually, you're going to be trying to get successes, but less successes than you need in order to win. So you're actually trying to reverse the way you're playing. You want lower rolls in order to die to these characters, but sometimes you may want to succeed in order to try and get more loot to add to your guys in order to get more epic points. So eventually you're going to want to try and die to these guys, and there's actually a special rule. If you manage to succeed in getting what's called epic death, meaning you roll the exact number of successes that you need on the card. So for example, 3 exalted victories. If I rolled exactly 3 6s out of my pool of dice, I would get what's called an epic death. And this guy, I would kill him and get the reward of the killing him. So I'm going to kill him, I'm going to get 3 loot and 3 fate, but the character, one of the characters from my party, is going to die as well. so a bonus. And on top of that, I also scored double his epic value. So let's say I decided to kill him with this character here. She's going to get all of the loot and the fate cards. I can distribute the loot however I want. She's going to die, but this card will stay face up, showing that she's going to get double epic from that guy at the end of the game, as long as she's face down. In this manner, you're going to keep going through quests until either the entire quest deck is exhausted, meaning all of the epic quests have either been failed or succeeded at, or you're going to go until one player manages to kill all of their characters. At that point, you're going to score all of the epic and fail points for all of your killed characters, and whoever has the best remaining epic score after all of that is going to be the winner. Now, in addition to the fate cards I showed you that modify the dice pool, there are some others that have slightly different effects. So, for example, there's the Help on a Quest card that one of your opponents can play on you, or you can play on one of your opponents, in order to take their turn for them, suffering all of the benefits and consequences of that turn. So this card essentially steals a turn, and it's called the Ancient Pact. We also have Frenzy, which causes all 6s to explode, meaning that when you roll your dice, if you get any 6s, you get to roll that die again, counting that as a success, and rolling it a second time to see if you succeed again. Another nice way to get extra dice. You can also re-roll all of your dice after you've rolled. So if I roll and I don't get the successes I need early on, or if I'm trying to die at the end of a game and I get too many successes, I can re-roll all of my dice to try and get the opposite result, or to change the result in some way. There's also the Runaway card, which you can play after you roll if you didn't succeed, in order to basically skip the quest, or you can actually play it before the roll if you want to, in order to skip the quest, deciding that it's too hard, and escaping without any consequences. Finally, there's the Swap Loot card, and this is beneficial for trying to get those sets of loots that I talked about. The loots that have the same name that when you collect the whole set on one of your dead characters will give you double epic points. So through the use of these cards, you can maybe score even more epic points, or less fail points, in order to win the game. Well, there you have it. That is Epic Death. The theme of this game is, in my opinion, hilarious. I love it. Great concept, and I really like the change from the beginning of the game, where you're, of course, trying to go out, you're trying to kill things and get loot, and then later in the game, you're trying to actually avoid being able to kill things, and your opponents will switch their perspectives at the beginning of the game from trying to kind of stop you from being able to kill things by playing negative dice cards or you know, taking the quest from you, to the end of the game where they're maybe trying to add dice to your rolls so that you succeeded a quest, get some more loot, which maybe you can or can't use because each character can only hold one piece of loot of each type, and give you some more cards, but really preventing you from getting the epic score of those monsters at the end of the game, because you really need to lose to them at the end in order to be able to get extra epic points. It's also kind of interesting that at the end of the game, you only get the positive or negative points from the heroes in your party that are dead. So if you're not the one to end the game by killing all of your characters, you're going to lose out on some points because not all of your characters will be dead. Whereas if you are the person to end the game, you may have more negative points because maybe one of your characters with a lot of fail on them managed to die, and you have to add all of those negative points to your score. So that shift in dynamic is very interesting. Anyhow, if this sounds interesting to you, you can check out the Kickstarter. It's already got a whole bunch of money, and I think they're already successful, and I'm sure they'd love to put the game out to even more players. So if that sounds good to you, check them out on Kickstarter, check out their page, see what benefits you can get, and maybe even offer them a pledge.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.